Part 84. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 831. Chapter 831 Your mother is afraid that you will find a girlfriend. Xiao Feng Feng, eat more meat, don't always eat vegetables, the nutrition is not balanced. Grandma chattered, then put a piece of braised pork into Yu Lingfeng's bowl with a smile. Thanks. Yu Lingfeng nodded lightly and thanked her, looking a little embarrassed. Grandma looked at Yu Lingfeng with eyes as soft as cotton wool, as if she were looking at her own grandson. On the other hand, Chu Sensiu, his true grandson, has never been noticed. Chu Sensiu. Forget it, he's used to it. The one who has not been favored since childhood, but now there is Yu Lingfeng who is competing for favor. Grandma, Yu Lingfeng doesn't like eating meat. Xia Ying saw Yu Lingfeng's face turn dark and she put the piece of meat into her mouth with great reluctance, and swallowed it whole without chewing it twice. Then she responded to her grandmother with an aggrieved smile, which made her feel a little distressed. The smile on my grandma's face froze, and she reasoned, this nutrition is not balanced, and I am still growing. Chu Sensiu couldn't hold back his laughter. Grandma turned to look at Chu Sensiu displeased. What are you doing? Grandma, how old is Yu Lingfeng, what kind of body does she have? Chu Sensiu said sourly. What do you know, boys will grow up to be 22 years old. Besides, what's wrong with making up for your body, you are the most talkative. Then I also need to replenish my health. Grandma, why don't you care about me? Chu Sensiu continued. Grandma, you are so partial. Humph, Yu Lingfeng is favored more than me now. As long as you know. Grandpa added coldly from the side. Chu Sensiu. He thought he would win the game, but it turned out that the two elders were really so ruthless. There is no love in this world. What have you been busy with recently? Your mother said you haven't video recorded with her for a long time. Grandpa thought of something, and then asked Chu Sheng to practice Taoism. Chu Sensiu had a headache when he thought about this. I am busy doing business with my uncle. My mother only talks about those few words every time. She asks me every day if I have found a girlfriend. I have just graduated. I am still young. Why is she so anxious? Grandpa coughed a few words and said calmly, she is not forcing you to find a girlfriend, she is afraid that you will find a girlfriend. Chu Sensiu was stunned after hearing this. What do you mean? Isn't asking him every day if he has found a girlfriend to urge him to find a girlfriend quickly? Maybe it's because of that little princess. Chu Shengming, who had been silent on the side, silently added. When Chu Sensiu heard this, he immediately put down his chopsticks and became hopeless. What age is this? Did his parents really arrange an arranged marriage for him? He has never seen the little princess. When he was a child, the little princess was still a female doll. Now that he hasn't seen her for so many years, he doesn't know what she looks like. Do we really have to force them to be brought together? It's so heartbreaking. Xia Ying laughed after hearing this and gloated, hey? How old is the little princess now? 13 years old. Chu Sensiu wants to crash to death on the dining table. As long as your parents are stupid enough, you have graduated from college and your girlfriend is still in junior high school. The little princess will meet you to develop a relationship after she turns 16, and she will marry you directly when she turns 18. When Grandpa said this, he didn't feel anything wrong at all, and it was as if it should be natural. Chu Sensiu looked helpless and collapsed. Grandpa and Grandma, does our family owe the king something, so you use my lifelong happiness to make up for it? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 832. Chapter 832 This is the fate between you and the little princess. What nonsense are you talking about? The little princess is of noble birth, well educated, and is known as the most beautiful princess in the history of country S. She cannot marry many people who want to, so how can you still be so obedient when you get an advantage, Grandpa said angrily. What makes this little princess unworthy of you? If the king hadn't admired you and liked you, you wouldn't have been married to the little princess. Chu Sensio chuckled with a black face. His brother was obviously much better than him. Why did he admire him so much? Isn't it okay for him not to want this gift? He just wanted to be a normal person and didn't want to be associated with royal blood. Chu Sensio is a person who is used to being at ease and can't stand the red tape of the royal family at all, so he can't imagine how his life will be turned upside down after marrying the princess. Go ahead and cherish it, Big Turtle Dove, Xia Ying mocked. If my uncle and aunt hadn't had the foresight to know that you couldn't find a girlfriend, so they had arranged it for you a long time ago, otherwise wouldn't you have been alone all your life? Chu Sensio's face darkened after hearing this. Cousin Xiaoying, is that what you think? You have to know that when I was studying at Taito University, the love letters I received every day could be sold for a lot of money. I just don't want to. I'm just looking for it. If I wanted to look for it, a group of beautiful girls would come lining up. Then why don't you look for it? Xia Ying interrupted Chu Sensio's talk. There is a destiny hidden in it. This is the fate between you and the little princess. Chu Sensio gave up communicating, turned his grief into hunger, and started eating. I can't talk to you, I'm going to eat. Chu Sensio's appearance made everyone laugh so hard. Actually, the little princess's real appearance has not been photographed by the outside world since she was 6 years old. So no one outside knows what she is like now, and the royal family protects her very well. But when she was young, she was as delicate and cute as a porcelain doll. At that time, she was the mascot in the hearts of the entire S country. If the little princess is sick, everyone in country S will feel uneasy. After eating, Yu Lingfeng was pulled over by her grandparents to talk. Of course, inevitably, his family situation comes up. When talking about this, Yu Lingfeng hesitated a little. Lingfeng's father left when he was young. Xia Chuanhai came forward and said. Xia Ying sat next to Yu Lingfeng, looking away at Yu Lingfeng's profile. Yu Lingfeng lowered his eyes, and his pupils seemed to be like stars, very dazzling, but with a faint sadness. It makes people feel the same and a little sad. I don't know who Lingfeng's mother is, so Lingfeng has always been alone. Xia Chuanhai continued, I always wanted to adopt him at first, but it was a pity that he was unwilling and has been living alone in the castle. Later, 11 Ju accompanied him, and now, he and Xia Ying are together, plus he was assisting police officer Song in investigating a very serious case, so he came to stay at our house temporarily. The old people were already soft-hearted, but when they heard Xia Chuanhai talk about Yu Lingfeng's life experience, the two old people felt even more distressed and cherished Yu Lingfeng even more. Poor child, no wonder you haven't been very talkative. It turns out it's for this reason. Grandma reached out and stroked Yu Lingfeng's head, her eyes full of love. It's okay. From now on, as a big family, they are all your relatives. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 833. Chapter 833. She had that dream again. Actually, it's okay, I've always been used to being alone. Yu Lingfeng smiled lightly and looked at her kind grandparents. He has been alone since he was a child, and he has never felt that he is pitiful. Because people there are like this. Family love is almost a non-existent concept. Parents are only responsible for giving you life and keeping you alive. Everything else has nothing to do with them. But it wasn't until Yu Lingfeng got to know Xia Ying and the whole family that he discovered that there is such a precious and amazing emotion as family. At first, Yu Lingfeng didn't understand it, but now, he can empathize with it. At the same time, I also envy them Earthlings for being able to have such precious feelings. This was something that their indifferent planet didn't have, and it was an emotion that Yu Lingfeng had never experienced before. Xia Ying had heard Yu Lingfeng talk about his family before, and he really didn't think there was anything wrong because Yu Lingfeng had explained it to her, so Xia Ying understood it, but they and others didn't. However, one thing that has always been strange to Xia Ying is that she always thought that Yu Lingfeng came to Earth alone. Isn't this what Yu Lingfeng told her before? But why does Xia Chuanhai know Yu Lingfeng's father? Yu Lingfeng's father disappeared, probably because he returned to his home planet, but why did Yu Lingfeng stay here? Xia Ying had many questions in her mind, and she wanted to figure them out. Even though Yu Lingfeng had already revealed a lot of information about herself to Xia Ying still felt that she didn't understand the answer to Yu Lingfeng's mystery. What was it? The weather forecast for tonight said there was a typhoon. Sure enough, not long after Xia Ying lay down on the bed, the weather outside had already changed. Xia Ying walked to the window, closed the window tightly, drew the curtains, and then turned back to the bed. She didn't know why, but she had been tossing and turning today and just couldn't fall asleep. The raging fire roared like a scourge. Young Xia Ying hid in a corner, listening to the crackling sounds of burning coming from around her, mixed with the helpless and noisy cries of children in the kindergarten. Xiao Xiaoying hugged her knees and cried so aggrievedly that she called her parents while crying. Why, she was obviously taking a nap. When she woke up and went out, she found that she was surrounded by fire, and the teachers around her didn't know where they were. No one came to save these helpless children. Xiao Xiaoying cried heartbrokenly. She looked up with tears in her eyes and found that there was also a little boy opposite who was hugging his knees and buried in pain. Xiao Xiaoying stood up and wanted to walk towards the boy, but at this moment, a burning stake suddenly fell next to her. Xiao Xiaoying was so frightened that she closed her eyes tightly. Just when she thought she was going to die, a tall black figure flashed past and quickly hugged her and moved her. The helpless and pitiful Xiao Xiaoying raised her head and met the man's eyes. Ah! Xiaoying suddenly sat up from the bed, breaking into a cold sweat. She had that dream again, the dream about a fire in the love kindergarten when she was a child. Ever since Xiaoying experienced that tragic fire, she would often dream about the scene that day in her future life. Only this time, she dreamed of Mr. R, the man who saved her at that time. Those eyes in the dream turned out to be so familiar. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 834. Chapter 834 Mr. R is your father, right? Xia Ying stood up, left the bed, put on her slippers, and walked to the opposite side, Yu Lingfeng's room. Xia Ying knocked on the door, and after a while, Yu Lingfeng opened the door. Yu Lingfeng was wearing pajamas and her hair was a little messy. She must have been woken up by Xia Ying. Before Yu Lingfeng could ask Xia Ying why she was looking for him in the middle of the night, Xia Ying had already thrown herself into his arms. Yu Lingfeng was stunned and lost all sleep. Yu Lingfeng closed the door and seemed to feel Xia Ying's body trembling slightly in her arms, feeling that something was wrong. Yu Lingfeng hugged Xia Ying, stroked Xia Ying's long and silky hair with her right hand, and said in a soft and low voice, "What's wrong? I just had a nightmare." Xia Ying's voice had a hint of crying, and Yu Lingfeng felt a twinge in her heart. Is it still the same dream? Yu Lingfeng has been woken up by Xia Ying in the middle of the night more than once, and then told herself that she had a nightmare. She hadn't had that nightmare for a long time, but she suddenly had it again today. Xia Ying nodded vigorously and clutched Yu Lingfeng's silk pajamas. "Yu Lingfeng, I'm so scared." "It's all over, don't be afraid." Yu Lingfeng patted Xia Ying's back and comforted her. Xia Ying was still so young at the time, but she witnessed the death of her childhood friends one after another, being swallowed up by the flames. Each of the living little lives passed away in a ball of bloodthirsty fire on the red ground. In the end, although she survived, the ruins and the memory of the fire at that time became a scar in her heart that would never heal. Even now, when she thinks about it, it still hurts. Yu Lingfeng held Xia Ying in his arms and said many comforting words. Finally, Xia Ying interrupted Yu Lingfeng with one sentence. Yu Lingfeng, I dreamed of Mr. R. Yu Lingfeng trembled and asked after a while, what happened to him in the dream? I dreamed about the scene where he saved me. I looked up and saw his eyes. For the first time in so many years, I saw his eyes so clearly in a dream. Xia Ying felt that her language system had collapsed. I don't know how to describe my mood and feelings at the moment. But Yu Lingfeng has been listening patiently, waiting for her next narration. Yu Lingfeng, the moment I just woke up, I had a very strange feeling. No, it might be an intuition. Xia Ying said this, looking up at Yu Lingfeng's handsome face, which was close at hand. With her flawless face, Xia Ying saw Yu Lingfeng's throat moving, and her expression was stunned for a moment. Although Xia Ying hadn't finished speaking, Yu Lingfeng had already guessed most of it from her eyes. Yu Lingfeng, I think Mr. R is your father, right? Yu Lingfeng frowned and looked down at Xia Ying. Why do you think so? Because I always feel that his eyes are particularly similar to yours. Just now in the dream. That's just a dream. Yu Lingfeng said, reaching out and touching Xia Ying's head, and then said, he can't be my father, don't think nonsense. Xia Ying blinked, why is it impossible? It's just impossible, he's not that kind of person, he can't sing. Oh well. Xia Ying's eyes dimmed, maybe because many things in the dream were confused. For example, she confused Mr. R's eyes with Yu Lingfeng's. Thank you to the little cutie, excellence is a habit, Jia Xiangtian, Shiming.xin, Purple Star Menglia for your rewards. There is obviously an exam early in the morning, so I will only update 4 chapters today. Let's see if I can write as much as possible tomorrow. Good night. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 835. Chapter 835. There is someone on Yu Lingfeng's bed. It's very late, go to bed. Yu Lingfeng said, taking Xia Ying's hand and leading her to the bed. The whole night, Xia Ying slept with Yu Lingfeng in her arms. She was still frightened by the dream just now and could not recover. Xia Ying fell asleep, but Yu Lingfeng started to suffer from insomnia. Yu Lingfeng lowered his head and looked at Xia Ying's sweet sleeping face. Thinking about what Xia Ying had just said to him, he felt faintly worried and uneasy. The next day, my grandfather and grandmother were both used to getting up early. My grandmother just sent the servant away, made breakfast by herself, and then prepared to wake them up one by one. When Grandma knocked on the door of Chu Shenming's room, Chu Shenming opened the door and was already dressed neatly. Grandma glanced inward and saw that Chu Shenming was already looking up some information on the computer and started working. Grandma, morning. Chu Shenming said hello habitually. Breakfast is ready, come over and have breakfast. Grandma looked at Chu Shenming with a smile. Good. Chu Shenming nodded, walked out, and closed the door. Grandma went on to call Chu Sensio and knocked on the door several times. Chu Sensio then rubbed his sleepy eyes and opened the door. After Chu Sensio waited for a long time, he gradually saw the person in front of him clearly. Grandma, why do you want to see me so early in the morning? Chu Sensio yawned and replied listlessly. It's so early, the sun is already shining on your butt, why are you still sleeping? Grandma suddenly became unhappy when she saw Chu Sensio looking half asleep and half awake. This guy has always been used to staying in bed, and he has not corrected this bad habit after so many years. Where is it? Chu Sensio squinted his eyes and glanced back at the wall clock on the wall behind him. It was only 8 o'clock, so why was the sun basking on his butt? He slept late last night, and now was the time for him to catch up on his sleep. Get up quickly, or I won't have breakfast for you. Grandma said seriously, then turned around and continued her task of waking up. Chu Sensio yawned several times in succession. At this moment, sleep was more important to Chu Sensio than anything else. Breakfast and other things were not yet in his health regime, so it didn't matter whether he ate or not. Chu Sensio thought this, and then when his grandmother was gone, he closed the door dejectedly, threw himself on the bed, and went to sleep in his cage. Indeed the soft big bed is the most comfortable. Grandma walked to Yu Lingfeng's door. Before she even knocked on the door, the expression on her face had already changed from the impatience she had seen from Chu Sensio just now, and became very gentle and peaceful. She didn't know why, but she fell in love with Yu Lingfeng at the first sight. In addition, Grandma loves Xia Ying very much, and she loves Yu Lingfeng even more. I really wish I could marry Xia Ying to Yu Lingfeng as soon as possible. Grandma thought sweetly as she knocked on the door. Yu Lingfeng walked over and opened the door. Are you okay, Grandma? Yu Lingfeng didn't sleep well last night, and her eyes were a little distracted. But in the eyes of Grandma, Yu Lingfeng's messy black hair, blurred eyes, and confused look were simply not too cute. Lingfeng, wake up, breakfast is already ready. Well, okay, thank you Grandma. Yu Lingfeng nodded, but just as Yu Lingfeng was about to turn around, Grandma suddenly looked in, then her eyes lit up and her body trembled. What did she see? There was another person on Yu Lingfeng's bed. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 836. Chapter 836. Let's get you engaged as soon as possible. Just at this moment, Xia Ying turned over and faced her grandma. Grandma only saw half of Xia Ying's face, but she recognized it at a glance as her Xia Ying. Ah! Grandma couldn't help but scream, and Xia Ying woke up suddenly in bed. When Xia Ying opened her eyes, Grandma had already ran to her with small steps. Yu Lingfeng cast his gaze over and held his forehead, helpless. He actually forgot about this. Xia Ying screamed when she met her grandmother's gaze, then pulled the quilt to cover her head. Her body was shivering under the quilt. Oh no, her grandma saw her sleeping on Yu Lingfeng's bed. Would she be thinking something wrong? It's so miserable. Xia Ying was completely frightened and woke up. Hey, Xia Ying, what are you hiding from? I've already seen you. Xia Ying didn't say anything, but her grandma had a bright smile on her face, smiling from ear to ear. It's quite the mentality of a girl growing up in my family. Seeing that Xia Ying was hiding under the quilt and unwilling to communicate with her, Grandma simply targeted Yu Lingfeng, who was stunned at the sight. Yu Lingfeng saw the look in her grandmother's eyes and silently moved her throat, feeling something bad. At this time, Grandma had already walked towards him, her eyes shining with gossip. Xiao Feng, have you and our little Yingying reached this point? No, it's not. Yu Lingfeng was a little flustered and explained awkwardly. Xia Ying silently revealed her eyes from the quilt and looked at Yu Lingfeng and her grandmother. How did Grandma get here and find out? Xia Ying felt that she was really unlucky. Ha 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 ha, are you both shy? Grandma couldn't help laughing. Now that things have reached this point, I will tell your parents and ask them to get you engaged as soon as possible. Don't worry, I won't say more. Grandma glanced back at Xia Ying, winked mischievously, and made a silent gesture. Xia Ying felt a crow flying above her head. Her grandmother really thought wrong. She thought she and Yu Lingfeng had already. Okay, you guys should wash up early and go have breakfast. Grandma walked out with a smile on her face, as if she thought she had discovered some shocking secret. She closed the door very gently, fearing that others would know. Xia Ying watched her grandmother's smiling face gradually disappear through the crack of the door, and then looked helplessly at Yu Lingfeng. What should I do? Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying's aggrieved face, walked towards her, reached out to touch her head, leaned close to Xia Ying, and whispered, I don't know, but I heard Grandma saying that we should get engaged as soon as possible. Xia Ying was startled, then met Yu Lingfeng's eyes and paused. Yu Lingfeng saw that Xia Ying was hesitant and thought she was unwilling to get engaged to him, so he frowned and asked, aren't you willing? No, Yu Lingfeng, it's just that I feel that I still don't understand a lot about you. What do you want to know? Yu Lingfeng stood up straight and his face became serious. You won't leave me, right? Xia Ying raised her head and asked this question seriously, you are not from Earth, but will you stay here forever for me? Yu Lingfeng's expression became a little unpredictable. He moved his lips, but hesitated for a while. But there was no answer at this moment. Xia Ying lowered her head in despair, and said with self-pity, look, you can't even guarantee this most basic thing. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 837. Chapter 837 I feel like a sinner. Perhaps because she was hurt too deeply in her last life, Xia Ying in this life is extra cautious about relationships. She naturally likes Yu Lingfeng, very, very much. She was also sure that Yu Lingfeng also liked her. But Yu Lingfeng is special. She doesn't know how long Yu Lingfeng's love can last, and how long Yu Lingfeng can stay with her. Yu Lingfeng leaned down and kissed Xia Ying's forehead gently, then held Xia Ying's hand and said with a promise, I will not leave you, I promise. Even if I really have to leave one day, I will definitely come back to you. Xia Ying raised her head, her eyes sparkling, really? Really? Yu Lingfeng continued, you asked me before why I stayed on the earth. I said it was because of you. I wasn't lying to you. Xia Ying said nothing, just nodded vigorously, and then stretched out her arms to hug Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng held Xia Ying in his arms, silent and lost in thought. While having breakfast, Grandma smiled and suggested at the dining table that Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng get engaged as soon as possible. Luo Xian was stunned for a moment. Sakura is still young. I plan to discuss this matter after Sakura graduates from university. After Luo Xian finished speaking, she glanced at Xia Chuanhai. Xia Chuanhai nodded knowingly, well, I think so too. You're too young, isn't Xiao Yingying turning 19 soon? It's just a matter of getting engaged first. After Xiao Yingying graduates from college, she can marry Xiao Fengfeng. Grandma was already constructing this picture in her mind as she spoke. It's so beautiful, this pair is so eye-catching. Yes, is it so urgent? Luo Xian suddenly became sad and looked at Xia Ying with red eyes. I always thought Xiao Ying was still young. I couldn't bear to marry her so early. The more Luo Xian spoke, the redder her eyes became, and her eyes were filled with tears, as if she would shed tears at the slightest movement. Mom. Xia Ying was half helpless and half moved. She shook Luo Xian's hand and said with relief, even if I really get married in the future, I will still be your daughter. This will not change. And if you want to meet, you can come to me anytime. I will come to you often. Wow wow wow. Before Luo Xian could say anything, suddenly Chu Shenxiu next to him put down his chopsticks and started crying. Everyone looked at him, confused. What was this guy doing? If my cousin Xiaoying really gets married, it will be difficult for me to see her in the future. Chu Shenxiu was crying with snot and tears. Chu Shengming, who was eating next to him, calmly handed him a tissue while eating, and reminded him, it's almost done. Yu Lingfeng's face darkened, and he was a little confused for a moment. Why did he feel like a sinner at this moment, as if Xia Ying had been abducted from their home? Zihu ate quietly the whole time, looking up from time to look at this and that. He couldn't understand the situation, so he might as well eat honestly. Turtle dove, it's okay, you still have your little princess. Xia Ying consoled her. Unexpectedly, Chu Sensio cried even more sadly. Don't tell me about that person, I'll get angry if you tell me. What kind of fate is this for him? Okay. Grandma was displeased, what are you doing one by one? It's obviously a happy event, but it's made to look like something for you. Anyway, I don't care, I just want Xiao Yingying and Xiao Fengfeng to get engaged as soon as possible, so I feel at ease too. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 838. Chapter 838 I want to witness her happiness. Mom, when do you think the time is right? Xia Chuanhai spoke calmly. Luo Xian pursed his lips, a little unhappy, but after thinking about it, he figured it out. It was a matter of time. She doesn't want to face it, but she still has to face it. What's more, she also likes Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng's conditions are excellent in all aspects. Moreover, Luo Xian, as a mother, sees how much Xia Ying likes Yu Lingfeng. Of course the sooner the better. Grandma immediately smiled. It's best to get married this summer. Grandpa is also interjecting. Chu Sensio was dull and unwilling to speak. Her cousin Sakura really doesn't belong to him now. There happens to be nothing going on in the institute during this time. Chu Shengming also added a sentence, implying that the time, place, and people were favorable. Chu Sensio raised his head and glanced at Chu Shengming sadly. Does his brother also hope that his cousin Xiaoying will get married soon? Is he the only one who is reluctant to part with it? Crying. Then, when the company's project is finished, I'll stop what I'm doing and take care of it. Xia Chuanhai said calmly. Okay. Grandma was already grinning from ear to ear, looking at Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng with love in her eyes. Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng looked at each other and smiled. When Chu Sensio saw this scene, he felt a violent attack in his heart. After eating, Chu Sensio slumped on the sofa, still buffering from this matter. Jun Chennai I went online for a rare occasion and invited Chu Sensio to play games together. Chu Sensio snorted twice and was very dissatisfied. This guy refused to beg him to play games with him some time ago, saying that he had work to do. Come over and invite him now. It's too late. I also have a temper. Unless you beg me. Not fighting, not in the mood. What's wrong? Ate a bomb? I would rather eat a bomb. Jun Chennai chuckled, what are you doing, are you depressed? This world is still very beautiful, don't let it get to you. By the way, is the wind on the rooftop comfortable? Chu Sensio. This girl has all kinds of bad friends. My cousin Xiaoying and Yu Lingfeng are getting engaged. I'm in a bad mood. What are you thinking? Master, am I the kind of person who commits suicide? I'm obviously optimistic, cheerful, and lively, okay. Jun Chennai's expression on the other end suddenly turned cold. Are Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng getting engaged? So fast? Although he knew this was an inevitable event early on, the moment he knew it, Jun Chennai still inevitably felt a surge of emotion in his heart. Jun Chennai did not return to Chu Sensio for a long time. Chu Sensio was puzzled for a long time and suddenly had an epiphany. Is he stupid? He actually forgot that Jun Chennai likes Xia Ying. Although Xia Ying is already with Yu Lingfeng and Jun Chennai has let go on the surface, Chu Sensio, as Jun Chennai's good friend, has always known that Jun Chennai has never completely forgotten Xia Ying in his heart. Cherry. So, now that he knows that Xia Ying is getting engaged to Yu Lingfeng, Jun Chennai's mood is probably not much better than his. With this thought, Chu Sensio sent a message to Jun Chennai, so what, Xiaojun, it's quite cool on the rooftop, do you want to come over and enjoy the breeze together? Jun Chennai smiled lightly after receiving the news and replied to Chu Sensio, when will they get engaged? No matter what, Jun Chennai wanted to witness Xia Ying's moment of happiness in person. After all, that was the girl I once liked so much. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 839. Chapter 839. That kind of horoscope is indeed a bad omen. Not decided yet, but it should be soon. This is the time. Do you want to come? Chu Sensio tensed his nerves, thinking about what Jun Chennai's expression and mentality would be like at this moment. Come, of course. Jun Chennai replied quickly. Okay, let's play the game, I'll get on board first. Chu Sensio said that he had already exited the chat interface and clicked on the mobile game. Jun Chennai followed up. After dinner, Xia Ying was pulled over by Luo Xin to talk. Yu Lingfeng did not follow her. After all, it was a private conversation between their mother and daughter. 11 Ju took advantage of Yu Lingfeng being alone and approached Yu Lingfeng. He sat obediently aside and watched Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng was reading a book, but 11 Ju stared at him for a long time before Yu Lingfeng raised her head and looked at him in a hurry. What's wrong? Yu Lingfeng saw that 11 Ju's expression was complicated, and he felt like he had a lot of words in his stomach but couldn't say them out. Master, although I know it's not appropriate for me to say this at this time, I still want to say it. Just say what you want to say. Yu Lingfeng had a vague premonition of something bad. Master, do you know? Qianyins can read the stars. Yu Lingfeng frowned, look at the stars. Is this kind of thing really accurate? Others couldn't guarantee it, but he didn't miss it. Zihu looked solemn and continued, Master, he said some time ago that something big is going to happen soon, and he also said that dark forces are about to rise. Yu Lingfeng held her forehead, slightly helpless, and interrupted 11 Ju's next words, I know this, didn't he post on Weibo? Yu Lingfeng only thought that he was a Chuyunibu, and because of this incident, Qianyins became a hot search topic, and Xia Ying even ran over to give him an order that every one of his Weibo posts would now be it can only be issued after the broker's review. Master, have you seen his accompanying picture? 11 Ju's words made Yu Lingfeng startled. Yu Lingfeng looked at him and asked, what's wrong with the pictures? Isn't the accompanying picture just a simple picture of the night sky? Nowadays, you can get the kind of pictures you just go out and take any photo. Is there anything that's all the fuss about? No, I have read the ancient books and studied the horoscopes in the picture. That kind of horoscope is indeed a sign of great misfortune. In the feudal historical period, this phenomenon often appeared in history. The emperor would die, or the country would be devastated. 11 Ju went further and further, and he looked very serious. Yu Lingfeng listened for a long time but still didn't understand what 11 Ju wanted to express, until. Master, tell me, does that star sign mean that that person is about to wake up? Zihu's eyes were shining as he stared at Yu Lingfeng very seriously. Yu Lingfeng lowered his eyes slightly, biting every word, and said word by word, no. What if, Master, as long as he is still on the earth for one day, isn't he a time bomb? As 11 Ju spoke, he clenched his fists, hinting at something to Yu Lingfeng. At the beginning, Yu Lingfeng did not kill him because of his momentary emotion. But now, 11 Ju is increasingly worried that he will make a comeback again. As long as I'm here, he won't have a chance to wake up. Yu Lingfeng raised his eyes, with a firm expression and no hesitation on his face as he answered 11 Ju. Zihu pursed his lips, but did not say anything. But when his eyes dropped, he was still very unwilling. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 840. Chapter 840. Do you and Yu Lingfeng have the same relationship? At this time, Luo Xian took Xia Ying and chatted about something. Xia Ying just answered one by one, but Xia Ying always felt that Luo Xian was acting strange today. She seemed to be holding back something and didn't say anything. When her eyes fell on Xia Ying felt like she was being spied on. A feeling of Sakura, mommy asks you a question, and you have to answer it truthfully. Xia Ying breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that her mother's sudden talk of talking to her was definitely not a good sign and she must be asking her something. After so much foreshadowing, now it's finally time to get to the main event. Xia Ying took a deep breath and prepared to take the attack. Luo Xian coughed a few times and suppressed the expression on her face. Xia Ying felt an inexplicable heaviness. What was the problem? Her mother seemed to have made up her mind before speaking out. Have you and Yu Lingfeng? Luo Xian paused mid-sentence, and the rest of the words were all in her eyes. Xia Ying's face suddenly turned red. Why did her mother suddenly ask her this? Made her very embarrassed now. Luo Xian saw Xia Ying's reaction and thought it was the answer in her heart. Fortunately, she had already prepared in advance, so she didn't feel incompetent. Luo Xian is a relatively enlightened hometown, not to mention that Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng are adults now and do things in a measured way. She didn't intend to make any demands on them from the moral high ground. What, actually, this thing is quite normal, but my mother still hopes that you can take measures after all, you are still in school. Luo Xian spoke hesitantly. Xia Ying's face was getting hotter and hotter, and she almost didn't dare to look directly at her mother. What are these? How did it come to this issue? No, Mom, where did you want to go? Xia Ying explained in a panic, Yu Lingfeng and I, we don't. No. Luo Xian was surprised and happy. What surprised her was that Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng had been together for so long. The relationship has always been stable, and Luo Xian also knew that they had slept on the same bed, more than once. Is it just that so many times, they were just chatting under the quilt? Fortunately, Luo Xian suddenly felt that Yu Lingfeng was a man who was very responsible and able to control himself. After all, their Xia Ying needs to have a good figure and a good face. Which man can't walk out without staring at her? Yu Lingfeng has been with Xia Ying for so long and he hasn't touched her yet. How much self-control this requires. Luo Xian's favorable impression of Yu Lingfeng suddenly rose to several levels. Xia Ying nodded and buried her head low in embarrassment, not daring to look at Luo Xian. But this is a bit strange. Early this morning, I felt that something was wrong with your grandma. She was inexplicably smiling from ear to ear by herself. I asked her something but didn't say anything. Then when it was time to eat, I had to forcing you and Yu Lingfeng to get engaged early. I thought she had bumped into something. Luo Xian was talking to herself, completely unaware that Xia Ying beside her was blushing so hard that she was bleeding. Xia Ying thought again about bumping into her grandmother early in the morning. It was really embarrassing. Okay, let's not talk about this problem anymore. Look how embarrassed you are, how red your face is. Luo Xian glanced casually and saw Xia Ying's strange behavior, which made her laugh. End of this chapter.